I'm going to go ahead and call the City Council meeting to order. Mary Jo, can you please call the roll?
Sue Grodick.
Here.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Here.
Stephen Coyle.
Here.
Andy Selhertz.
Here.
Kathy Pucci.
Here.
Aaron Borowski.
Here.
Kevin Tansky.
Here.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have opening remarks by Mayor Van Kirk.
Mr. Borowski this evening asked me to share a prayer for the victims of the school shooting in Nashville, and I'm happy to do it. Let's pray. Lord, as we gather tonight as an administration and a council to discuss the business of our city, we do pray for our dear countrymen there in Nashville as they grieve the loss of these 6 individuals, Evelyn, Haley, William, Cynthia, Catherine, and Mike, to this senseless violence. We pray that you'll please comfort the families, give protection to those that are still there. Lord, I pray that you'll give comfort. Lord, I pray that you'll continue to keep our city safe from these types of attacks. We thank you for our safety forces that do such a great job protecting us day in and day out. Lord, we do again pray that you'll give comfort there. Bless our meeting tonight, help it to be profitable, and pray that we will make wise decisions for the wonderful people of Brooklyn. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.
We do have approval of minutes from the February 27th meeting. Any comments or questions?
Motion approved.
Second?
To approve the minutes, Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle.
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski.
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
We will now have the first public session. If anyone has anything to say pertaining to agenda items only, please come forward, give your name and address, and you will be recognized. Please limit your time to 5 minutes or less.
Good evening. Is there a timer?
I have, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Waiting for you to start.
Wait for me to start. My name is Liz Dragney, 4201 Downcliff Drive in Brooklyn. I would like to speak on city ordinances and proposed ordinance 2023-7, establishing a pilot program for keeping of hens in Brooklyn and declaring an emergency. The intent of Brooklyn's list of ordinances is to preserve and protect the interests of the public that live here in Brooklyn. And I think that Brooklyn's mix of income levels, ages, and family size make this wonderfully diverse city attractive. Naturally, as time moves on, new people will move into our city with fresh ideas, and it's important to consider ideas that historically may not have seemed as important, but now are very popular with a younger set of homeowners. Ordinance 2023-7 is one of those ideas. In addition to Cleveland, the cities of Lakewood, Strongsville, Independence, Cleveland Heights, Oakwood, North Olmsted, Westlake, Olmsted Falls, and others have all adopted heavily regulated ordinances that allow backyard chickens as pets and at the same time address community concerns. And these are the same regulations that apply to dogs, cats, and other pets in Brooklyn. While the keeping of chickens as pets seems foreign to most of us, it's not unheard of. These are not exotic animals. The city of Brooklyn allows bees, pigeons, parrots, and rabbits to be kept as pets on privately owned property. There's no rational reason to keep denying backyard chickens like this. People clamoring against this idea have stood before city council to say so, and they were right to do it. But all they wanted to do was prove that chickens just don't make good pets. I find it very odd that I have to point out that much like owning a dog, one does not have to personally want to own chickens in order to accept the idea that some other residents might want to do so. I imagine the majority of our residents are completely indifferent about the idea, and they don't care either way, as long as it doesn't bother them on their own property. And it has not gone unnoticed that some of the most vocal Brooklyn residents against Ordinance 2023-7 are not even actual property owners, but renters who would be completely unaffected whether it passes or not. The biggest argument I've heard in my correspondence today is that the Brooklyn Parma Heights Shared Animal Control Officer, Miranda Browdy, feels that backyard chicken keeping is not something she would support. I can understand why she feels this way. Last February, a homeowner in Parma Heights was discovered harboring a flock of backyard chickens, and the wind blew the doors open and they escaped. Parma Heights Police Department had to assist in rounding them up, and it was a real mess. From what I understand, Officer Browdy also fears that chicken owners might accidentally acquire a male bird instead of a female one, and that should the pilot program fail, there would be birds that would be displaced and sent to alternate locations. Fair enough. But if she's read the proposed ordinance 2023-7, she would realize that all of her concerns are addressed in this ordinance. As for the incident in Parma Heights, you might not be aware that Parma Heights prohibits chickens. The reason there was an issue there is because, unlike Ordinance 2023-7, there were no provisions for the resident that broke that ordinance to follow. Miranda need not fear a repeat of that incident here. This ordinance is tighter than the lid on a pickle jar. Violations will be managed and enforced. The hens and the people who participate in the pilot program are under the strict supervision of it. The prospective participants of the pilot program are required to take a class in chicken keeping, sign applications, allow their property to be inspected, and must prove that they are responsible enough for the privilege. And finally, in the event of problems, the Director of Public Safety may revoke the permit at any time if the permit holder materially fails to adhere to the provisions of this pilot program or for the safety and well-being of the citizens of the city, as determined by the Safety Director. If at the end of 12 months the program is determined by City Council to be ineffective, then the experiment is over and the chickens are relocated. No harm, no foul. However, if it proves to be successful, then Officer Browdy's fears of a chicken apocalypse will be eased. Ordinance 2023-7 satisfies every rational concern that residents who oppose the ordinance have demanded be put in place. It's a viable test of the willingness of Brooklyn homeowners who wish to keep hens prove that it can be done while at the same time maintain their civic duty to be responsible citizens and neighbors. Of course, we do appreciate Officer Browdy's service, and her input has merit. However, she's a resident of Independence and not of Brooklyn. The Independence City Council adopted legislation for the keeping of backyard chickens in September 2021. Brooklyn legislation should not be up to a part-time officer who does not even live in our community. I find it a bit ironic that Miranda is free to keep chickens at her home in Independence, but they could turn around and decide that I cannot. Thank you for letting me speak today, and I hope you'll give Ordinance 2023-7 your support.
Good evening. My name is Eric Dragney, and I live at 4201 Dawncliffe in Brooklyn. By passing Ordinance 2023-7, the City of Brooklyn will be joining several other nearby communities and allowing its residents to enjoy their personal property in a way that will not disturb their neighbors and surrounding community. Officer Miranda Browdy had concerns that were heard and considered. They were brought before this very council and the Safety Board. That is the reason why we abandoned the proposed legislation ordinance 2022-44 and replaced it with the much more detailed pilot program, ordinance 2023-7. I'm confused about the objections. Officer Browdy is the animal control officer that we share with Parma Heights. I appreciate her input, but ultimately she is not a member of the City Council, nor is she a Brooklyn homeowner. This legislation was brought before City Council, not before Officer Browdy. The Backyard Hen Pilot Program specifically outlines every step that will need to be taken to obtain a license, and applicants will be required to adhere to the terms of the pilot program in order to participate in it. This very legislation has been successful in other cities near us in Cuyahoga County. It is clearly stated in the ordinance that the pilot program could be terminated at any point, and that if it is terminated, residents will have 30 days to rehome the animals. I don't see the continued objection here. As for Parma Heights, you may not be aware that Parma Heights prohibits chickens. The reason there was an issue in Parma Heights is because, unlike Ordinance 2023-7, there were no provisions for the residents that broke the ordinance to follow. Under this pilot program, Officer Rowdy need not fear a repeat of that incident here in Brooklyn. Of course, we do appreciate Miranda's service, and her input has merit. However, she is a resident of Independence and not Brooklyn. The Independence City Council adopted full legislation for the keeping of backyard chickens in September 2021. Ordinance 2023-7 is more restrictive than what they put in place in Independence. Like Liz, I too find it a bit ironic that Miranda is free to keep chickens, but can turn around and decide that I cannot. Based on the small percentage of applications, I just don't see the sky falling in when this ordinance were to pass. To clarify, this ordinance is not requiring all residents to keep chickens. It is allowing 0.07% of residents to have the opportunity to take advantage of a pilot program. The rules are strict. Yes, there is some accountability on the part of the resident. Based on the application that is created, all concerns can be stated and signed off on by that resident. The power to tailor the application is up to us. Thank you for letting me speak today, and I hope you will give Ordinance 2023-7 your support.
Rob Slattery, 6600 Bucyrus Drive. I had no intention of talking about this tonight, but I want to thank Miranda for the work she does. I find it hypocritical that people are going to talk and say, well, she doesn't live here, she shouldn't be telling us what to do, but we should listen to people from Lakewood, Independence, Parma Heights, and everything else. You can't have it both ways. It's up to you guys. In the council of the whole, you guys took a role. I hope you guys stick with that and vote this down.
Anybody else for public session regarding to agenda items? We will now move on with reports of committees, commissions, and boards. We will start this evening with the Recreation Board. Councilman Tansky.
Thank you. Brooklyn's Easter egg hunt will be held on Saturday, April 1st. Registration is required. Check in at the Senior Center at 10:30 a.m. Hunt begins at 11 a.m. at Veteran Memorials Park in Safety Town. Ages 0 through 10, there will be raffle baskets and pictures with the Easter Bunny available. Register at www.brooklynrec.com. Brooklyn baseball and softball registration runs through March 31st. T-ball ages 3 to 4 and rookie coach pitch ages 5 to 6. Register at www.jumpstartsports.com. 8U coach pitch baseball and softball ages 6 to 8 as of May 1st. Residents $55, non-residents $65. 10U, 12U, 14U baseball games, 10U, 12U, 15U softball leagues. Ages 8 to 15 as of August 1st. Registration runs through March 31st. Residents $70, non-residents $80. For more information, please visit again www.brooklynrec.com. Next Recreation Board meeting will be held on April 17th in the Rec Center meeting room, 7 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Planning Commission. Councilwoman Sue Grodick.
Thank you. The April Planning Commission meeting has been canceled due to lack of applications. The next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, May 3rd at 6 p.m. And that concludes my report.
Next up, we have the Domestic Abuse Commission. The Domestic Abuse Commission met this past Thursday on March 23rd at Panera. We planned out the next few months of events at this meeting. In April, we will be hosting a guest speaker on April 26th at 6 p.m. at the Brooklyn Library. We will also be doing an event with the library with pinwheels as we have in the past. We did it pre-COVID at the Michael's Craft Store, and this year it's going to be just a make and take at the library at a table up front, and then some coloring of pinwheels. And this is in recognition of Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. On May 24th, we will be hosting a guest speaker from the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office, Fallon Radigan, who works in the Internet Crimes Against Children Unit. We'll be meeting at the Brooklyn Library again that month at 6 p.m. In June, on either June 6th or June 7th at 6 p.m., we'll be hosting an event. We're looking at potentially at our new City Hall to participate in Letters Against Isolation in recognition of Elder Abuse Awareness Day on June 15th. Letters Against Isolation is an international effort to connect volunteers who write letters or cards to isolated and lonely seniors to brighten their day. I hope others will join us in this effort. We'll provide the materials to make the handwritten cards. We just need volunteers to come help us create them. And then finally in August, we'll be hosting a book discussion with the book It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is a sequel to the past book discussion we did in, I believe, 2021 with the book called It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. So if you do want to participate, I encourage you to get on the wait list for the first book, It Ends With Us, at the library, so that you can join us in August with the book discussion. And that ends my report. Next up, we have the school board liaison, Councilman Borowski.
Thank you, Council President. On the school's website, there's 2 links I want to mention tonight. The preschool and kindergarten registration, which opened up at the beginning of this month, as well as the link for those interested in their school treasurer position that is currently open for applying. Those links can be found at www.brooklyn.k12.oh.us. And a big congratulations goes out to Riley Wilson for her winning a state championship at the Business Professionals of America state competition in finance. And another big congratulations goes out to the school for being awarded the Auditor of the State Award for a clean audit report given by Keith Faber. Congratulations to both of those, Riley and the school, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Board of Zoning Appeals, Councilwoman Grodeck.
Thank you. At the last Board of Zoning Appeals, they approved a request for fast signs and Jealousy Auto Detailing for a variance of 3 additional signs to the allowable 1 on the building face for signage. And their address is 7323 Clinton Road, excuse me. The next meeting will be Thursday, April 20th at 6 p.m. And that concludes my report.
And finally, this evening, we have the Committee of the Whole report. We had Mike Henry, our engineer, give an update on the Brook Park Road project, the local streets program, and the Memorial Plaza construction. Brook Park Road construction will begin in Brooklyn in May and should conclude around August. They will be repaving from the train tracks over to the Big Creek Parkway. And then they do plan to coordinate with the state and county on the Ridge Road construction that does still need to take place, as some of it will overlap with the timing with the Brook Park. So they have been in communication and plan to work together to mitigate as much overlap as possible. Director Abruzzi gave an update on the trails project going on in Memorial Park. Some people might have noticed that Ohio Paving is getting ready for the bridge install. The estimated completion is June or July of this year. And then we did go over legislation for this evening. The Committee of the Whole made a recommendation not to pass 2023-7, which is the pilot chicken program. All other legislation, which is on first reading tonight, was recommended to pass by suspension of the rules. As in the past, I will give notes on each piece of legislation as it's read into the record before voting. And then one final thing that we discussed, got an update on, was the Simbay contract, which is on Resolution 2023-9, is the same cost as it was last year, and it's already an established company. So that's why that one is on suspension of the rules. Committee of the Whole meets at 6:15 before all regularly scheduled council meetings, and all are welcome to attend. We will move on with council reports. We'll begin this evening with Councilwoman Grodick.
Thank you. First, I would like to thank again Mayor Van Kirk and Chief Paul for getting the weather radios available. From what I've read on Facebook, there have already been some residents who have got them in their house and had their first alerts this weekend with the severe storms that were going through our area. So thank you again, and I hope if a resident is interested in receiving one, the criteria is fairly simple. You have to be a resident. You should not have any other access, such as a smartphone or other device. And you contact the fire department. They also are willing to help you get it set up and make sure that you have backup batteries. So again, thank you for making that available. And if you would keep us posted on if it's successful and we go through the 30 radios during this stormy season, maybe we'll need to look on expanding it and making it a permanent part of our services for residents. Thank you again. Also, just as a point of information, strictly because I had a resident ask me at the end of last meeting if I had heard anything about NOPEC, and literally within the next couple days we received an email. So I just wanted to say that NOPEC will be hosting a series of in-person and virtual natural gas and electric informational meetings. The registration for the virtual meetings will be available after April 1st, which is Saturday, and you can register at nopec.org/info meetings. And the meetings are held during the second half of April, the 3 virtual meetings, and we will have one in our area in Parma in the evening. So if you are interested in learning more about NOPEC and getting back into their electric aggregation program, the information will soon be available. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, because I think we'll all be talking about at this meeting, is the 2023-7, our pilot program to allow chickens in Brooklyn. And I just wanted to take this moment during my council report to commend Councilman Borowski for listening to a resident's concerns and taking legislative action. I would like to commend him for his time and his research involved in this issue. And I think that 2023-7 is a really good example of how our local legislative process can work. Aaron worked on the original ordinance, and then with this current one, with input from residents, with input from council, administration, and others with experience from other cities. And yes, we've been talking about chickens for quite some time now, but that was more due to some unrelated timing issues. For example, November's election, and also the change in roles for our mayor and for city council. That's really what caused some of the delays in this process. But tonight we're finally to the point where we're having the third reading on 2023-7. And I'd like to just remind residents that no matter what the outcome of tonight's vote, I think this is a model issue for local government. We're trying to legislate in the best interests of our community. And again, I'd like to commend Councilman Borowski for bringing it and seeing it full circle through to tonight. And that ends my report.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councilman Coyle.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome our new building commissioner, Mike Greer, as well as Adam Griffith and Eric Kluth in the police department to the city. I wish them success in their new roles. Over the weekend, my family and I had the pleasure of attending the high school's production of Sister Act. If you didn't get an opportunity to go see it, you really missed out. The cast, pit orchestra, crew, directors, they all did an amazing job as always. And if you get the chance next year, definitely go see it. It's always a great show. Lastly, on tonight's agenda, Ordinance 2023-7 is up for third reading and adoption, potentially establishing a pilot program for backyard chickens. I'd like to thank all residents who have sent emails, spoken at the Public Safety and Environmental Committee and council meetings, whether it be for or against it. We've all invested a lot of time in this decision, but for me, my vote will be based on Miranda's guidance. As our animal control officer, Miranda is the expert in her field. If she foresees there will be issues, then I trust her judgment. And I also feel that it's inhumane and unethical for us to establish a pilot program with live animals that could fail, potentially causing chickens to need rehomed or euthanized. For these reasons, I will not be supporting this ordinance. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Councilman Solcherz.
Thank you. Echo Councilman Coyle's sentiments about Sister Act. Thank you to all the students, parents, teachers, just everybody involved with it. It was a good show. No milk and cookies tonight, just a short story. The next chapter, First Energy into LED streetlight conversion. Memphis Avenue got done, was completed in about 3 days. There are 6 items that need to be resolved on a punch list. One of them has been resolved. Ridge Road northbound from Memphis to I-71 is done. The best thing out of the last 2 weeks is Associate Avenue is done. It's a light industrial street off of Ridge Road. We requested a brighter wattage than they were going to do. They actually did it. They actually probably scrolled right on the Excel sheet. Those are good things. So Chief Milky got his request done. So at the next meeting, we'll give you the next chapter of the story. Laurel Garden Club and Friends of Brooklyn Library will be having 2 events in April and May. April 19th is Color Through the Seasons, choosing the right shrubs and companion plants. May 17th is Native Plants, Rugged Care, Easy Survivors. Both are open. Registration is open through the county library website. The spaces are about 60 and 75 for each event. They're already half full, which is just wonderful to see. Cleanup dates for Keep Brooklyn Beautiful are posted on volunteer.kab.org's website. Look for Brooklyn, and you should find a number of events that we'd like to have you just come out and help us with. If you need community service hours, we'll sign the form, the paperwork for you, and we'll gladly work with you. Also, as everybody else mentioned about Aaron, thank you for all the work that you've done on this legislation, but I'm also not in favor of it because I respect Miranda's, she's the authority in this, and we're going to it. I mean, we can legislate left and right, but she is the person that has to work with this. It's no different than when I was in with the state tax department years and years ago. Legislator would come up with stuff, and then we're trying to sit and figure out how to implement it. You have to go back to the source, to the people that are actually working in the field with it. So I'm not going to be supporting that. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, Councilwoman Pucci.
Thank you. Good evening. First, I'd like to offer my condolences to the family of Mrs. Violet Beal, who passed away. Mrs. Beal was a longtime resident and had been active at our senior center. Her son and daughter-in-law, Jim and Deanna, who also lived in Brooklyn for a long time. Mrs. Beal was the matriarch and a much-loved member of her family. Congratulations to the performers, stage, crew, pit orchestra, the staff, the parents, and all the volunteers on a successful production of Sister Act. Brooklyn has a long history with music and drama performances, and now all of you are part of that proud history. Also, welcome to Mr. Greer. We're very glad that you're here. It's been a long time. So, welcome. Just a couple upcoming dates relating to the election. April 3rd is the close of registration, and this is not just for registration, but it also means if you have to change your name, address, anything like that. And then April 4th will be the opening of both early in-person voting and vote by mail. There are some other changes, which we talked about a little bit, in some of the laws regarding ID, and also if you vote by mail, your ballot now. It always had to be postmarked by the day before the election that Monday, but now instead of allowing the post office to take up to 10 days to get back for it to count, it's 4. So do not wait to the last minute. Regarding House Bill 1, I have been following this since it was introduced, and this is very bad for local governments, schools, basically any taxing authority. Mr. Raguse provided us with some estimates how it could impact Brooklyn. Basically, the state wants to reduce the income tax. However, once again, they want to do this at the expense of local entities. There's a property tax rollback of 10% plus another rollback of 2.5% for owner-occupied properties. The state reimburses the taxing authorities for this. So they want to eliminate this, and in an effort not to have this portion of the property tax fall back on the property owners, they want to reduce the percentage that properties are taxed at. Currently, we pay property taxes on 35% of the market value. The state proposes this to be lowered to 31.5%, and then they also have a whole formula where it could potentially be reduced further. And while this may satisfy property owners, this leaves the taxing authorities basically hurting for money. According to Mr. Raguse's estimates, up to 2030, we would lose about $2 million. However, the biggest losers will be the school systems. And this is because of their reliance on property taxes for their funding. Please pay attention to this and contact your state representatives. Regarding chickens, I did a lot of research on all aspects of backyard chickens. I spoke with people in other cities. I spoke with ACOs. I read a lot and saw quite a few videos from that are distributed by backyard chicken organizations. And while we have a few residents who are interested, we are charged with making decisions on what is best for the community as a whole. I do always listen to and respect all points of view. Then I make my decision based on the facts that I've gathered and what I believe is the best decision for the city. And while there are some benefits for those interested in owning chickens, there are too many negatives for the city as a whole, and I'm not going to go in and list all of them. Certainly one of them does have to do with our staffing. And we do not have a full-time animal control officer. She is part-time, and we share her with the city of Parma Heights. She does have valid concerns, and to be clear, our ACO does not make this decision. Certainly, we respect what she has to say, but the decision is up to council and the mayor. And I don't think it's fair to portray her in a negative light. She's a dedicated employee, an animal lover, and she really does do a great job for us. I feel like we're lucky to have her. We also don't discriminate in Brooklyn. Renters are an important part of our community. There are many different reasons why people choose to either own or rent, but all residents have the right for their opinions to be heard. I also appreciate the fact that Mr. Borowski took the time to pursue this on behalf of a resident who was interested in having chickens. And I too want to thank all our residents who took the time to let us know what their opinions are. I also heard from quite a number of residents who didn't come to meetings. A lot of people are not comfortable getting up and speaking in public. And I do appreciate the residents who communicated their views with us. And that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Councilman Borowski.
Thank you, Council President. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you to Council for letting us see this through to an actual vote tonight. From the very first day I brought this up, my goal was to present something that would eventually lead to a vote, a up or down vote, a yes or a no vote. I wanted to see this thing through, and I appreciate the fact that we're getting there tonight. So thank you for all the effort you guys have put into this, the safety meetings, the research, the residents that spoke. Miranda, others from other cities. I do truly appreciate it, and that's actually how democracy works. It's literally working with your co-council people, listening to the residents, doing the research, and again, I'll accept whatever decisions we decide on tonight. My report for tonight, the first item is this past week was World Water Day, which involves ideas and action of accelerating change to solve the water and sanitation crises around the world. Water affects us all, so everyone can make a difference by taking action. That means you, your family, and community can make a difference by changing the way we use, consume, and manage the water that we use. Some of the simple steps that we can take are taking shorter showers and also turning off the water in between that of washing dishes and brushing your teeth. You can also fix leaking pipes, as well as avoiding putting chemicals down sinks and toilets, and also taking part in local cleanups of streams, rivers, and or even lakes can make for a safer waterway. I'd like to also announce something that I've been working on for about a month or so. Last month, I spoke here on a charity that I had been introduced to called Adopt a Cop. They are an organization that works with local gyms by offering to help cover some of the costs accrued by local police and firefighters that train at jiu-jitsu sponsored facilities. I was approached by the management at the local World's Gym at the Bidoff Plaza after they had partnered with the Zenith Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They asked me to assist them with the outreach to the charity, and I'm happy to announce that Adopt a Cop has agreed to sponsor that organization at the gym. I went ahead earlier tonight and I passed to Chief Malky and Chief Paul the information to pass on to the other police officers and firefighters. And I'd like to also say thank you to Cindy Ashweiler that helped me with this as well. I'd like to say thank you to Zenith Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and World's Gym Bidoff for looking out to help our local first responders. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Next up, Councilman Tansky.
Thank you. Good evening. Ordinance 2023-7. I just want to thank Councilman Roski. I too admire your work ethic and drive on this ordinance. Did a very good job going through it. Miranda, our animal control, did not give positive feedback on this ordinance. We are already splitting services with our billing director with another city. And the billing department will be overwhelmed this spring with tall grass violations, many other property violations. Also, I get many calls about these property issues as well. I believe our billing department has enough on their plate not to have to chase chicken violations or coops. I don't see us having enough staff to babysit at this time. I don't even know how many man hours the building department nor the control officer would have to basically go out and take their time and study and find out if there are violations. How many hours is this going to cost the city and take away from what they need to be doing? This is why I'm not in support of this ordinance. A little bit of a longer note now. I had a few residents contact me over this issue, and it's been reported on the news numerous times. Councilman Grodick touched a little about this issue in her report. Electricity prices for many FirstEnergy customers are expected to double in June, and this increase will last through May 2024. This affects customers who are on the standard service offer from the utility company. While many customers can shop for their own electricity deals, a lot of people in our area get their electricity by default through FirstEnergy standard service offer. The reason for the rate increase is because the utility company, FirstEnergy, buys its electricity at auction for the standard service offer. Then they pass that power at cost to the consumer. FirstEnergy has had to buy power at much higher rates lately. In October, the utility agreed to buy 1/3 of the power it needs at about $53 higher than it than it is paying now. Customers are allowed to shop on the open market for their own electricity supplier. But if they don't pick one, they get the standard service offer from their utility company, and many people in the First Energy territories and other parts of the state often use the standard service offer because it is cheap and convenient. However, Matt Brakey, head of Brakey Energy, an energy management firm in Chagrin Falls, said that there will change for many people. Wholesale electricity was expensive when First Energy was required to buy it in October and January. But prices have fallen drastically since. This means come June, someone shopping for their own electricity will find much cheaper option on the open market. The problem, Brakey said, is timing and purchase of your contract. First Energy prices are still cheap in comparison to the open market and will stay that way until June. When someone chooses an electricity supplier, they generally make the switch during meter reading, when a utility worker comes out to read your meter. Brakey said customers who shop around should try and make the switch during their May meter reading, which means signing up for a new supplier in mid-April at the latest. Anyone wanting to shop electricity suppliers, use the Apples tools at energychoice.ohio.gov. To get into this a little deeper, I have an electricity bill that I defaulted into their residential service under First Energy at 5.47. Usually the 5.47 per kilowatt is usually high. But since this economy has been unstable, First Energy supply rates have been lower than most of the Apples different programs that they have out there, different companies with suppliers. I would suggest that 5.47 is going to go into the 10-11 range. So people that have defaulted into First Energy need to get off that rate sometimes in April and tack on to another supplier. That rate will double. Channel 8 had a very good program talking about what's going to happen to people's electricity bills if they don't do this. I defaulted into First Energy because 5.47 per kilowatt was cheaper than every apples to apples company out there to go to at that time, at this time. But that's going to change. Again, anybody that's defaulted or on the standard program with First Energy, and the reason why First Energy was so cheap in the first place, because they buy it in bulk. They have the money to buy it in bulk, and that's why they got it cheaper at this time. 2 years ago, it wasn't like that. It was more competitive, and the economy was stable. When you go to Apples and Apples, watch for the termination fees and the monthly recurring charge. What that is, and I suggest nobody get into these contracts with these termination fees, because rates are fluctuating so much right now that we were in the 7, 8, 9 zone about a year ago. We're down in the 5 and 6 area. 5-6 point kilowatt. If you tack on to one of these companies and you take a lower rate, as it's on Apples and Apples, you're going to get termination fees or monthly recurring charges. Now, you're rolling the dice. And what I mean by that, if you get a lower price with termination fee and this thing turns around in 6 months and prices drop and you tend to move, you're going to get hit with this termination fee along with possibly a monthly recurring charge. So be very careful when you get on Apples and Apples. Click onto every company and look in their small print on what they're offering you and what they're going to charge you. I myself never get into these termination charges. I get into a fixed rate. Fixed rates are anywhere from 6 to 12 to 24 months, maybe 18. When you get into these companies and you get into the variable rates, which I entered in one of those, which was a mistake. They offer you an introduction rate really low when they get you in there. They're hoping you don't pay attention to anything, so then they raise that rate 2 months later, and now you're going to pay more. So be very careful. When you get on the apples and apples, look at their small writing, their contract at every company, and go from there. Again, I would do this no later than the first week, if you're with First Energy right now, no later than the first week of April, because those rates will double. I would also like to wish all the residents and their families a very happy Easter, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilman Tansky. I have just a couple of things this evening. First off, as Councilman Selchurz mentioned, we do have our dates and locations all set for the community cleanups. We are starting this year on April 22nd, which is Earth Day. We'll be meeting at 9 o'clock at Home Depot on Brook Park Road. And then the following week, April 29th, is the annual Big Creek Connects cleanup, where we'll meet at the fire station. And so to go off of Councilman Borowski's report about cleaning up along waterways, that's a great one to come out and help us up. We clean up around the creek over there, and then some of us come over to Memorial Park and clean up in the creek over here too. So those are the 2 April dates. We hope to see you there. I did just want to echo what a couple people mentioned tonight about the high school musical production of the Sister Act. Just a big congratulations to all the students, the staff, the parents who drove the kids to and from practice. Everybody played a part in making this a fun show to watch this year. And one final comment just on the ordinance 2023-7, which is the chickens. I do like to try and compromise and find middle ground where possible. I talked with Councilman Borowski after the last meeting. There were questions that I was hesitant about as well regarding vets that would potentially treat chickens and potential places to rehome, because it is a pilot program. And he got back to me the next day with the information. So I am voting yes tonight. I understand that it is not going to pass, but when possible, I do like to try and find that middle ground. And I told him early on, after hearing different concerns and everything, that a pilot program would be the best way to potentially start this. So that ends my report. Next up, we have the mayor's report. Mayor Van Kirk.
Thank you. I too want to welcome Adam Griffith and Erica Clue. Today was actually Erica's first day in the police department, so 2 new additions to our police department. Welcome to both of them. Adam started a couple of weeks ago and is already fitting in nicely here in the department, so welcome both of them. Also, as already been mentioned, Mr. Greer, today was his first official day as the building commissioner for both Bedford and Brooklyn, and his first day here in Brooklyn will be this Wednesday. So as Mrs. Pucci mentioned, it's been a long time since we've had someone in that position, so Mr. Greer, we're very glad to have you and hope you have a long success here in the city of Brooklyn, so we're glad to have you here. Thursday was Kathy Messeri's last day at the Senior Center, and I want to thank Rachel Laskowski and Maria McGinty, as well as Mr. Abruzzi, Miss Westfall, and Miss Simcoe. All of these people and these folks will be filling in at the Senior Center as needed, as well as the slate of volunteers that work at the Senior Center every day, and as we make this adjustment and find a replacement for Kathy. She will be missed. She was a good employee here, so we wish her the very best as her new position in Bay Village. If you drive across the Tiedemann 480 bridge, you can tell that the ramp signs on Tiedemann are being installed. The brickwork was completed last week. The installation of the signs will actually be completed at the end of this week as well. The landscaping then will begin shortly on that project. We've talked about many times. As was mentioned in the committee of the whole, I've been working with sister city Strongsville, who did a very similar project in their city on the I-480 quadrants back in 2009, as far as how they handle the upkeep and the maintenance of those quadrants with the landscaping, the grass cutting. I've met with Mr. Verba, Mr. Bruzak, Mr. Rini of our building department, of the service department, and we're working through the best way to handle the landscaping of that. We're investing a lot of money into that, into those quadrants to make it look nice and entrance into our city, and so we want to make sure that it is cared for safely and properly. As part of the master plan, it called for a master plan update for Veterans Memorial Park, and we have partnered with Benke Landscaping to do that. And they have finished their preliminary report. It was just emailed to me today, and I will have a meeting with the Recreation Department in the coming days to go over that report, and then they will bring their preliminary report to present to council and to the community on April the 24th. As Mrs. Grodick mentioned in her report, the NOAA radios that we discussed at the last committee of the whole meeting, they've been purchased and are available at the fire department. Information about this pilot program is posted on our city's website, as well as the city Facebook page. And I'm glad to hear that residents are already taking advantage of this program. The city center electrical components that we have been waiting for have finally arrived, and they're currently being installed, and we are on schedule for a May 5th completion date. And then we will have a ribbon cutting ceremony at noon on May the 23rd. All are welcome to attend that. Of course, that will take place over at the new city center. As far as the timeline for moving, City Hall will move on the 5th. The police department will move the next week. We'll have an auction here for the items that are left here in City Hall. Will be a public auction for those. And then on May 22nd, we'll begin the abatement process and the demolition process of this building. That will take place from May 22nd through July 7th. And then if all goes as well, the library site work will begin here on this property on July the 10th. The library is currently completing their final plan documents, site plan documents. They will be delivered to the building department here by the end of April. They will then go to Planning Commission for consideration and approval. And then, as I mentioned, July will be the start of their construction if all is approved. The I-480 eastbound entrance from Ridge, the I-480 eastbound exit ramp to Ridge, and the I-480 eastbound entrance from Tiedemann will all have asphalt overlays completed by ODOT, and that will take place in May or June. It's at the top of the priority list, so I want to thank ODOT for being responsive to our request for that. As soon as the asphalt companies open up, we will be one of the first cities that will receive those overlays on those ramps. Chief Paul has been interviewing and doing ride-alongs with potential hires for our 3 new firefighters that will be hired. Those should conclude this week or next. And I would anticipate offers being made to 3 new firefighter candidates here in the first half of April. The new street sweeper that was purchased through shared sewer district dollars has arrived. It's already been out on the street, so if you've seen it out there doing its work, the service team is very pleased with how it works so far. So we're glad to have it out there. Additionally, the new salt truck chassis that was ordered is complete, and it's now at our equipment vendor having that equipment installed. At the end of last week, the week before last, we submitted applications for federal dollars through the Direct Congressional Spending, or DCS. These applications were filed with both Representative Max Miller and Senator Sherrod Brown's offices, and these dollars were applied for 9 police vehicles and the ancillary equipment that goes with them. If this is awarded, it will cover the cost of those vehicles and their equipment. It's just under $530,000. To my knowledge, this is the first time that Brooklyn has attempted to receive an application or has sent an application to this program. We should know in a few months if we're awarded. Whether we receive these funds or not will have no bearing on whether we purchase these vehicles. The order is actually already in process, and we expect to see the vehicles be built in June. And then there's a 3 or 4 month lead time on that equipment. We would expect to have the vehicles on the road sometime this fall. If we do receive funds for that grant, we would be able to redirect those dollars that we would use to purchase the vehicles to another project. The street repairs project for local streets, the bid opening was this last Friday. The bids came in under estimate, so we're grateful for that. And so those roads, the local roads that will be done this year are Archmere, Elizabeth Lane, Forest Edge South, Traymore, West 66th, and Brookwood. And this also, on top of that, will be the Memphis Tiedemann turn lane that will be done this year. Also Brook Park Road and Ridge. So there'll be a lot of upgrades being performed this year. And I'll talk more about the Brook Park Road project now. We just got the information from Mr. Henry, our engineer. Either came late Friday or today. I can't remember exactly when it came. But the project will begin on April the 3rd. It will actually begin outside of our city. It will actually begin in Cleveland around West 130th. And the first phase will go from there to the CSX Railroad crossing, and that will take up through the end of May. Again, that's not in our city, but if you drive Brook Park Road, that will affect you. They will start into our city sometime between May through the end of August when they go from CSX to the Big Creek Parkway. And then once they complete that, they'll start at the end of August. They'll start from Big Creek Parkway and go all the way to the east side of State Road. And that will take them through this construction season for 2023. And if all goes as planned, that will conclude the construction in the city of Brooklyn. The actual project itself will carry on in the next year as they do the other side of Cleveland and also the parts of Brooklyn Heights. And so we will coordinate, as was mentioned, with the Ridge Road project as well to hopefully alleviate some of the traffic concerns that will be over there. And so we'll keep everyone posted. All of this information is posted on the city's website, and I believe it's also been posted on the city's Facebook page. In regards to the timing for the Ridge Road project, Mr. Verba has a meeting this Wednesday with the county, who is in charge of that project. We'll have more information on that after he has that meeting. A letter, a fact sheet, and a zoning map have been prepared and will be mailed to residents, giving an overview of the zoning changes that will be on the May 2nd ballot. So residents should expect that information to be in their mailbox in the coming days. The civil service test will be given on Wednesday, April 5th. And we'll be looking to hire 2 police officers from that list. Dr. Caleres from the Brooklyn School District will attend our May 8th council meeting and will give a presentation to council, updating council on what is happening in the school district. And he has also invited me to attend the Brooklyn School Board meeting on June 21st to do the same for what's going on in the city, present that to the school board. Just as a housekeeping note, the indoor pool will be closed April 15th through May 21st, and they'll be replacing the skylight in the pool room, the auditorium, so that will be closed April 15th through May 21st. Mrs. Pucci talked about House Bill 1. I have met both with Senator Dolan and State Rep. Delaquilla. They're the representatives and the senators from this area, and both have expressed our concern in the disagreement with House Bill 1 to both of them. And so hopefully that bill will either get drastically changed or will die in committee, which is hopefully what happens. Lastly, Resolution 2023-11. This is the Memorial Plaza project. That bid also came in under the estimate from our engineer. And additionally, on top of that, we should be able to be reimbursed about $35,000 of those costs from the grant for the site preparation. That was the same grant that we will use to pay for this building. That work should begin sometime in April. And as was already mentioned, I do want to wish all of our residents a happy Easter. Hope you enjoy the holiday with your family. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Next up, we have reports of directors. Finance Director, Director Raguse.
Yes, good evening. Just one item for me tonight, just a brief review of the February financial report. Highlights are on the revenue side. Overall revenues are 18% of the estimated amount and 21% more than prior year due to an increase in income tax as well as interest revenue. Overall commitments are 32% of the budget amount. That's mostly due to the timing of encumbering funds for a good portion of the remaining of the year. Overall commitments are 12% more as compared to February of last year. So pretty much this is very similar to the January financial report. On the income tax side, we received our distributions from RETA for March. Total distributions were at $1.26 million. $43,000 or 4% more than March of last year. Excluding any one-time or non-recurring revenue, March of this year is $97,000 more than March of last year. Withholding accounts for a gain of $87,000 or an increase of 8%. $18,000 of this is attributed to catch-up payments due to late filings. And of the $97,000, net profits in individuals make up $10,000 of that. So overall positive news on the income tax front for March, similar to what we realized in February. That concludes my report. Is there any questions from City Council? Thank you.
Thank you. We now have legislation. We'll begin this evening with the notification. There was $100,000 of ARPA funding from the county for the recreational trails project. Under old business tonight, we have ordinance 2023-7, which is on third reading and adoption tonight, establishing a pilot program for the keeping of hens in Brooklyn and declaring an emergency.
Motion to approve.
Second.
To adopt, Sue Grodick,
No.
Meg Ryan Shaki,
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
No.
Andy Selhertz,
No.
Kathy Pucci,
No.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
No.
Fails.
Motion failed. Under new business tonight, we have Resolution 2023-8, which is on first reading, but looking to adopt through suspension of the rules, extending a moratorium imposed by Resolution 2022-28 on the acceptance and processing granting of applications for zoning, occupancy, and/or building permit approvals for small box discount stores and the issuance of such approvals in the city of Brooklyn, Ohio for a period of 180 days and declaring an emergency. And just a quick update on this ordinance, it is something we've seen before a couple of times now, and this is the last time that we will be doing this. It's being changed in the zoning code, and so administration had asked us to have a moratorium on them until the May election so that the new zoning code can be adopted and those new rules are in effect.
Introduced by all, suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
To adopt, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
Next up, we have Resolution 2023-9. This is also on first reading tonight, but looking to adopt through suspension of the rules. Authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Simvay LLC to provide information technology professional services to the city of Brooklyn. And just one update, or not update, but comment on this legislation. This is the same cost, which is $95,000 as last year, and this is an already established company that we've worked with.
Introduced by all, suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
To adopt, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
Next up, we have Resolution 2023-10 on first reading tonight, but looking to adopt through suspension. Placing a moratorium on the granting of building or occupancy permits for any building, structure, use, or change of use that would enable vape and tobacco businesses in the city of Brooklyn, Ohio for a period of 180 days and declaring an emergency. And similar to the other moratorium we just passed, the new zoning code does touch on these types of businesses, so we're looking to place a hold on them until the May election.
Introduced by all, suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
To adopt, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci,
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
And finally, this evening on our agenda is Resolution 2023-11. Again, this is on first reading, but looking to adopt through suspension of the rules. Accepting the bid of Grade Line Inc. for the park relocation project and declaring an emergency. And this was the only bid that came in, but it came in under the engineer estimate at a cost of $98,275. And Mayor, part of this will be, as talked about in your report, reimbursed.
Well, we will apply to have a reimbursement.
Yes.
Should be reimbursed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Introduced by all, suspend the rules.
Second.
To suspend the rules, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
To adopt, Sue Grodick,
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle,
Yes.
Andy Selhertz,
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski,
Yes.
Kevin Tansky.
Yes.
That's all on the agenda tonight. We do have the second public session. If anyone has anything to say for the good and welfare of the city of Brooklyn, please come forward, give your name and address, and you will be recognized. Please limit your time to 5 minutes or less.
Rob Slattery, 6600 Bucyrus Drive. Every time I come up here and I speak as a private citizen. I give my name and my home address. I don't want anybody to think that my comments have any tie to the school in any way. They do not. Council rules were changed this year, and now the residents can ask questions at the end of the meeting on any topic, but the council can adjourn without answering those questions. To me, it's a clear way that you guys can try and silence the public and just kick questions down the road. I'm going to ask a few questions tonight, and I would like some of the council people to answer them. I don't want to waste time coming back here in 2 weeks and asking the same questions I had to with the mayor who quit. So if somebody would write these down and respond, I would appreciate that. I've attended countless meetings and have asked about staffing of our police department, fire department, and service garage. Every time the response is that it's a budget item, we can address it at the next budget. The city administration and council discussed and just passed an ordinance charging veterans or families of vets $50 for the banners, down from $130 where they were being charged to recoup costs for such as the salary of the worker making the banner. We sat here through several safety meetings talking about emergency sirens, and the cost of $50,000 was too high of a cost, and they would not spend that money to repair or replace them. We heard Cindy Whitey get up and speak last year about the radios, the weather radios. Now the city's decided to start a pilot program, which I think is great. And they plan on, you just reported to purchase 30 radios for, I believe, $30 a piece. We now see the city starting another project at I-40 in Tiedemann on the on and off ramps. I inquired about the project and sent a public records request to the law director. Per the law director, the cost of the landscaping contract for that project is just under $279,000. There'll be two Brooklyn signs, a quarter of a mile down from a Brooklyn sign that costs roughly $40,000. Will these signs improve the quality of life of our residents? How did the city find the funds for this new project but cannot entertain spending the money for more weather radios? The account of this project could have bought radios for every resident in the city. Once again, the city administration has taken their eyes off the main goal of protecting and providing for the residents. If we have this kind of money, why don't we have a senior grass cutting program for the senior citizens? You were spending large sums of money on the wants instead of the needs of the residents. Did City Council know that that project was that expensive? And there's unknown cost. The service director stated right now, he's not sure about the equipment and what may be needed. What about the signage that's required working on the highways? I'm sure that there's all kinds of requirements on that, but we don't know yet. Then I'd like to inquire why Councilman Borowski contacted someone at my wife's place of employment at Baldwin Walls College to inquire about her. If you're going to try and gather information about me about an attack piece, because I'm running for mayor, going after my wife is way out of line. My wife is not running for office. I would like an answer to why you made that call. The person you called told my wife you called her. The person you called was your brother. At least he had the common decency to tell my wife you made that call. I'd really like an answer why you did that and why that was necessary. Lastly, I'd like to end on a positive note. I'd like to thank the members of the Brooklyn Fire Department. They held an amazing fundraiser the other night, and I was able to attend with my wife. We had tons of fun, and we'll be back next year. Please pass it on. They did a great job. Thank you.
Does anybody else have public comment for the good and welfare of the city of Brooklyn?
Good evening, everyone. Victor Ardito, 7439 Outlook Avenue. I've ridden a motorcycle since the early 80s. Exact year, I don't remember. Getting too old for that. But I've watched TV, so many shows and things and laws and that. If you're going to wear a helmet, fasten it. You see on so many TV shows and movies, get on, pop the helmet on and go. I've had one person die that I know, and the helmet came off in an accident. If it would have stayed on or not, I'm not sure if he would have lived. Another guy who was riding a quad, we're out of the party, he's going out and he whipping around, and he almost hit a fence that he didn't notice. Fell off and the helmet went flying. Rick, didn't you have it fastened? No, it fit pretty tight. I didn't think it'd fly off. And sort of like common sense. And if you're getting on a motorcycle, even with a windshield, not all states require it, put safety goggles on. I see it on TV, it's all the time. I see people on the street riding, and passengers especially. You never know what's coming around you. I just watched the new movie Top Gun. You get on the motorcycle, him and the girl, and she's on the back. You know, it's comfortable, it's neat. No glasses whatsoever. And stuff flies. I've ridden the Gull Wings and had stuff come around. Cars kick up, hit me in the helmet, hit me in the face. I was driving down the road in a van eons ago. Car kicked something up, put a nick in the plastic panel right behind the windows. Stuff flies. And for years now, I started wearing gloves whenever I ride, lightweight gloves. Because if you go down, most people's first instinct, you're putting your hands out to catch yourself. And knock on wood, I've never go down like that so far. I saw an accident on the way to work the one day. And I stopped to see if the guy was okay, and his hands were chewed up. He put his hands down. And I mentioned that to him. He goes, "This is the first day I got out of the house and didn't put my gloves on." So be safe when you're out there. Have a lot of fun. Put a lot of miles on. And stay awake. Stay alert. And be safe. Things happen in an instant. And that's all my sermon for this week. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Anybody else for public session for the good and welfare of the city of Brooklyn?
Hello, everybody. Steve Herbick, 4402 South Amber Drive. I wanted to mention something that Brooklyn Acres on St. Patrick's Day held a phenomenal corned beef dinner, sandwich, music raffle. We cooked 535 pounds of corned beef, and that's probably the hardest I've ever worked in my life, along with other people in the city. It was not strictly a Brooklyn Acres event. The entire city was invited, and in fact, more Brooklyn residents and Acres residents attended. There was wonderful music from Becky Boyd, who's a local Cleveland legend, fantastic musician and songstress who played many Irish ditties. The Brooklyn Acres Crochet Club put together an amazing quilt that was raffled off and was won by Bill Mobley, and he's very lucky to get that. It was an outstanding piece of work. And I wanted to mention that little crochet group over there in the Acres as well. Not only did they volunteer their time to put together this beautiful Afghan, they also knit scarves, hats, gloves for the needy kids of Brooklyn. They also knit blankets for honor flights for World War II veterans to go to Europe. So these folks need some recognition, and I wanted to give some of them a bit of that today. Next up, Mayor Van Kirk. I was wondering if you are still employed with the Cleveland Baptist Church. If so, how long do you plan on continuing that work, and how many hours a week do you work there? And Councilman Tansky, you've kind of taken the lead on the solar project. I was wondering if you could give a date when the contract with CPP ends, and if so, if memory serves correct from reading that contract many years ago, the city will now be responsible for the maintenance of the solar farm and the road. So can you provide a cost or an estimated cost of what the residents will be paying for the upkeep of that solar farm? Lastly, I think it's fantastic, 30 weather radios were purchased. So thankfully 30 residents will have possibly some advance notice of a weather emergency. We still have approximately 10,000 residents who have no access to early warning system. Somehow we've conflated these sirens to be tornado sirens. They're not tornado sirens. They are emergency notification sirens for a whole slew of different things that can happen. And we've seen the train derailments across the country and the horrible damage they've caused to residents. I'm hoping you guys will take this further. This talk about the sirens have been going on since they stopped several years ago. We don't know. We have a guesstimate of how much it would cost to repair, but do we really know how much the repairs are unless we have somebody go up and take a look? personally, I don't think it's a coincidence they both stopped working at the exact same time. So hopefully we'll put as much effort into protecting our citizens as we did in passing or trying to attempt to pass the chicken ordinance. Again, I just want to say thanks to all of the Brooklyn residents and Brooklyn Acres residents that put together an amazing St. Patrick's Day event, and I hope all of you will attend next year. Thank you.
Anybody else for the second part of public session? The mayor, directors, or anybody on council, do you have anything before we adjourn?
May I be recognized?
Yes.
So regarding the cost of the monument signs, and there's going to be very extensive landscaping surrounding that. First of all, that was approved a couple years ago. It was delayed, correct, Mr. Goose? And, you know, we're trying to position ourselves as a very vibrant community to attract, you know, clearly residents, but also businesses that bring in jobs, which our city is dependent on those jobs because that's where we get the bulk of our revenue from. And it is, other than the upkeep, it is a one-time investment, kind of a once-in-a-lifetime investment. And, you know, we're all very proud to be from Brooklyn, but there's a lot of people out there that, oh, Brooklyn, New York, you mean Old Brooklyn, which is actually part of Cleveland. And, you know, this is just going to enhance our identity as a separate community. But it also, I think, enhances our pride. I know that when we had our beautification program years ago, where we had all the flowers and the hanging baskets all down Memphis Avenue, residents, it was very, very well received. Residents like to see when the city is taking pride in our property, and although that is on ODOT's property, but it is the gateway to our city. And I suspect that had we known, you know, hindsight is 20/20. Had we known that this would be something that we'd be undertaking and that we'd be able to do it in the future, we probably would not have done the Brooklyn sign at Biddulph, which me personally, I didn't think that that made sense at all at the time when we did it. It does look very nice. And again, that's something that we got a lot of positive feedback from residents. I just didn't think it made sense because it really wasn't an entrance to our city. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I be recognized?
Yes.
Also, Mr. Slattery, I was making a few notes while you were speaking. Before I was on City Council, I was part of the Master Plan Committee, and there were some groups that were surveyed, specifically the need for having our city stand out and have some sort of mark. And that, from those committee meetings, the master plan was developed, and the master plan does talk about name branding our city. And that's where the signage came from the new City Hall and Memorial Park. That's also where the new logo came from. And as part of our 2021 budget meetings, the landscaping and the signage on Tiedemann. Many people, both residents and businesses, expressed a need for Brooklyn to have to be able to stand out. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who has described our city as, you know, it's the exit by the Plain Dealer Building. So rather than having to say it's the exit by the Plain Dealer Building, everyone will see that that Tiedemann is the Brooklyn exit and entranceway into our city. And yes, it isn't for safety, and of course safety is our priority, but it's not our only priority. And as somebody who was so involved with the master plan before I was on City Council, and now part of planning while I'm on City Council, I do want to see the things that were brought out in the master plan come to reality. And it's taken a few years, as I'm in my 3rd year of city council, but I'm glad to see the bricks going up, as I was glad to see the logo and the other signage going around our city. Thank you.
May I be recognized?
Yes.
One more quick thing that just came to mind, and that is that we actually started discussing replacing our outdated signage, not specifically what's on 480, but all the way back to when Mayor Balbier was here and Mrs. Miglerino was here. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Anybody else?
May I be recognized? Mr. Slattery, so I saw a post by your wife on Facebook about some kind of event set up and so forth at BW, and I said, hey, I wonder if that's Baldwin Wallace. So I reached out to my brother Benjamin that works at Baldwin Wallace, and I asked him if he happened to know someone with the last name Slattery. That was it. The fact that you feel as though I was trying to do a hit piece, that's kind of appalling and disgusting. It was a simple question of whether or not he worked with someone. So if you find that offensive, I apologize for that. It wasn't to be taken anything negatively. It was just, hey, do you happen to work with this lady? That was it. And if your wife took it as though I was causing any troubles, I apologize to her as well. But that is not the case. Thank you.
Make a motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, yes.
Just to add on to what Mrs. Pucci and what Mrs. Rodick said, all of these improvements that you're seeing around the city, or most of them, go back to that master plan. We had that master plan done several years ago. It called for a lot of these things that you're seeing. We take pride in our city, and letting people see that pride is important. You have to be willing to invest in your city, to be able to invest in the community, so that it shows others that are coming into the community, hey, this is a place that we want to be. I had the privilege of visiting TRG and TAP Packaging the last couple months, and both of those men that own those companies were in downtown for years. In fact, TAP Packaging was downtown for over 100 years, and they chose to move to Brooklyn. And what both of them said to me was, we had no idea that Brooklyn was even here. Really, I mean, they'd heard of Brooklyn, but they didn't really know about it. We're close to the airport, we're close to the highways, we're a safe community. And so it's very, very important that we market Brooklyn as being just that. We that live in the city, we know about it. We're here every day, we see it. But we're trying to reach out to other businesses, to get other residents to come in and move in here. Of course, safety is our top priority. That's why we're hiring 3 firefighters. That's why we're in the process of taking the police test to hire 2 police officers. That is of the utmost importance, as it should be. But as I believe it was Mrs. Groder, or maybe Mrs. Ryan that said, we have to do more than one thing. I think it was Mrs. Groder said that. We have to be focused on many things, and that's the goal, and that is the idea behind that. It's going to make the city really stand out. And we will continue seeing that. The streetscape project that will take place on Brook Park Road is another one of those things. The master plan that's being done here for the parks, that's going to enhance and protect the parks. All the work that was done over at Marquardt Park. All of those things are part of the master plan that are enhancing our city. And we're going to continue doing that moving forward per that master plan. Now to answer Mr. Herbeck's question about my employment. I've been in this position for 3 months. Mr. Herbeck, I would have been you welcome to call me or email at any time, but since you opened up the opportunity here, I will go ahead and take advantage of it. When the former mayor confronted me about possibly moving on to the county at the end of late last summer, she mentioned it as a possibility. And so I took it as that. It wasn't until December 9th or 10th that the mayor told me that she was accepting this new position at the county. And I wish her well, that's completely her prerogative. That obviously put me as the council president in a somewhat of a precarious position, to where, per the charter, I was to take over to finish out the mayor's term, which is 1 year. However, I still had an employer that was counting on me to do my job that I loved, and was doing for 18 years. I have done my absolute best to do that. Mr. Herbeck, I am here usually before almost anyone here at before 8 a.m. on weekdays, and I am almost the last person to leave every single day after 5 p.m. I am here more than full time. I am still assisting my church in my business manager position, because this job that I have as the mayor is 1 year. It's 1 year. I have not decided whether I'm going to run for mayor or not. but that is my job, and I will continue to do it. It's the right thing to do. I have given up, and I'm not looking for sympathy. I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm not looking for anyone's sympathy, but I have given up teaching, which I love at the school. I've given up directing the music at our church, which I love, and a whole list of other things in order to fulfill this position. And I'm not complaining, and I'm not looking for any praise, which is why I have not brought this up at all in a public meeting, but you asked the question, so I'm answering it. I don't know the number of hours that I work at the church, but those hours are non-work hours here and on weekends. It has zero effect on my position here as the mayor. You can ask any one of the directors, any one of the employees of the city. I am here for this city and have been and will continue to be while I'm in this position. Now, as far as moving forward, if I decide to run for mayor and I were to win that position, then I would have to resign my full-time position at the church. I'm well aware of that. But this is a one-year position that I have taken for the residents of this city. I'm happy to do it, and that is because I believe this is the right thing to do. So hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, please feel free to give me a call or email me. I'd be happy to do it. I've explained that several times to many people. But truly, it is an honor to serve in this position. And it's, I was speaking with someone today. My life has kind of been turned upside down. I hear in the last couple months it wasn't something necessarily that we were expecting. I'm honored to do it. I'm privileged to do it. But at the same time, I'm trying to strike that balance, and I believe that I've been able to do that. And if anyone has any questions, they, of course, can feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'd be happy to answer them. That's all I have.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. I just want to assist Councilman Tansky. A resident requested information about the solar farm, and the answer to the question with respect to the city's obligations as it relates to the array, solar array on our landfill site. So the city is merely a landlord, and the city has no obligation to maintain that solar array at any time before, during, or after the lease under the lease agreement. No more obligation to maintain the solar array than the owner of Ridge Park Square would have to pour a cup of coffee at Starbucks. We have no involvement in the operation or maintenance of that array. We make sure that the fence is gated and the power comes off of it.
Just a quick question. Over to Mr. Verba. How many times a year has the county cut that grass, and are they maintaining it?
They cut it probably about 2 times a year under the array, and then our property we still maintain.
Okay.
And as far as the road goes, we just use, when the street program grinds the streets, we'll ask the contractor if they can dump some of those grindings, and then we just fill that in with the grindings and just roll it. I mean, there's no cost at all to us. So.
Pretty much the maintenance being taken care of proper?
Yeah.
Over to Mr. Butler. He also asked when the contract was ending. Do you have that date, the exact date on when that lease with the county?
We have a lease with a company called, I think it's iOS2, which is an affiliate of IGS Solar in Columbus. We don't have a lease with the county. That lease can be assigned to the county, but it hasn't been. And it's a 20-year lease for the first term.
It was 20 years, but I didn't have the exact date.
I don't either. I don't believe that was Mr. Herwig's question. I think his question was when our agreement with Cleveland Public Power ends. That's a customer agreement. It's a separate agreement. It has nothing to do with the landfill site. We entered into a customer agreement with Cleveland Public Power as a commercial customer because Cleveland Public Power, as it was building lines down Memphis Avenue to accommodate the solar field, was going to put new lines above the new city center site and in front of the rec center, and we wanted those lines to be buried. And so in agreement with Cleveland Public Power, those lines are buried in front of the city center site. And we are a customer of Cleveland Public Power for certain of our facilities.
With the new facility?
And without looking at it, I don't have the termination date of that customer agreement, but
CPP was tied, I believe they were tied in to stay there, if I remember, with the county along to pull that power out of it, correct?
CPP pulls the power, so we use CPP's distribution lines, pull power out of the landfill solar site. That power enters CPP's grid. It's distribution facility, I think around Ridge Road and West 60 something, thereabouts. And it is the off-taker of that power, the purchaser of that power is Cuyahoga County.
Right. And CPP will continue to pull that power until basically further notice, correct? In other words, they can't pull out.
That's right. That's correct.
Mr. Herbert, did that answer both questions?
Yes. But I asked you.
And I would have gotten those answers too, and Mr. Butler came up with it. I just don't have those dates in my mind. I know it was 20 years, but I just don't have the exact date.
Make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
To adjourn, Sue Grodick.
Yes.
Meg Ryan Shaki.
Yes.
Stephen Coyle.
Yes.
Andy Selhertz.
Yes.
Kathy Pucci.
Yes.
Aaron Borowski.
Yes.
Kevin Tansey.
Yes.